Welcome to Binge Breakthrough, the podcast designed to help you finally break through the barriers that keep you stuck feeling out of control around food. I'm Master Certified Coach Jane Pilger, and I want you to know that no matter how long you've been struggling or what you've tried, food freedom is possible, and I'm here to show you how. After years of therapy, eating disorders treatment, restrictive diets, and reading all the books, I was still stuck in the on-again, off-again cycle of restricting and binging until I was able to see it all from a new perspective that changed everything. Each week, I will share the strategies, tools, and mindset that allowed me to overcome my decades-long battle with binge eating. Your journey to body trust starts now. Let's dive in. Hello, trusted listener. Welcome to Binge Breakthrough. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you are listening to this podcast for a reason. I trust that you are going to hear something today that is insightful and impactful on your journey with food. So I'm really excited for today's episode because I have a fun announcement for you. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, do you ever wish that you had all of the ideas and all of the concepts that I talk about in bits and pieces in the episodes? Do you ever wish that you had all of these things in one place? Well, I have great news for you. This now exists because I wrote a book. And I am going to tell you about the book in this podcast episode. I want to tell you a little bit about my inspiration to write the book. I want to tell you about the book itself, what is in the book, so you can decide for yourself if this is something you might want to check out. And I also want to tell you a little bit about the process, what the process was like for me writing the book and what I noticed. So I started out wanting to write a book. I would say probably a couple of years ago was the first time that I really voiced out loud my desire and my intention to write a book. And it was one of those kind of conversations. Wouldn't it be amazing? What would you love to do? And I remember thinking, I would love to write a book, but it kind of felt big. It felt far away. So this was probably, I would say maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. And then this year, in the beginning of this year, when I really thought through my goals for this year, I wanted to write a book this year and then publish it next year. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go self-publish, do the hybrid publishing route, find a publisher. There's so many. There really are a lot of options when it comes to writing a book and how you get your book out into the world. And I really didn't even know what that might look like. But what I thought is that I would write the book this year, and then next year would be kind of when I would introduce the book to the world. And so then I had this idea. I knew I wanted to write the book. I knew that I know the impact and the power that one book can have. Now, I've read a lot of books. I really am a pretty voracious reader. I love to read books. There have been some books in my lifetime that I've read and kind of forgotten about. There have been some books that I've read and really have been very impactful. And when I think back to going through my own journey with binge eating and all of the books that I read, there were maybe very few that were very impactful for me, but there was just something missing in what I was looking for. And so when I set out to write this book, I wanted it to be the book that I wish I had, the book that I wanted when I was struggling the most with binge eating. And that's really what I wanted to create. So I knew I wanted to write it, but I really wasn't sure where to start. And it all felt like a lot. It felt like a very big undertaking. And so earlier this year, I follow a coach by a guy by the name of Rich Litvin, and I really like his approach to coaching. His approach really is creating meaningful conversations and connections. And I like his approach a lot. And so I follow him. And earlier this year, he offered a book writing course. It was kind of a group course type of program. And I thought, this would be a great vehicle to get the book done. Here's a guy I like his approach. He can, if I go get into this environment, I will have a lot more structure. I'll have some guidance, and this will be a really great way to actually get the book done. So I joined this course. I started working on the book, and it was fascinating for me to really see what was coming up in terms of my thinking. There was a lot of some overthinking, some not good enough. Oh, this isn't good enough. I knew what I wanted to do, but I was really I could see some of my perfectionist tendencies and some of my not good enough tendencies kind of coming in as I was working on it. But I was still very motivated. I was definitely making progress. It also became very clear. He had several people come in and talk to us who were published authors who did already have books out into the world. And the biggest theme that I heard from so many of them was how challenging it is to write a book. That it's very easy to have the idea of writing a book, to have the desire to want to write a book, but to actually write a book and to get it out into the world, the theme I kept hearing over and over again was how challenging it actually is. And so that helped a little bit. It helped me to know that any resistance or doubt or uncertainty that was coming up for me was completely normal. And I also didn't want to write a book in the way that just felt hard the entire time. So I had a friend who is also writing a book, a very different book, but she also very much has a big dream in her heart to write a book. So we did a lot of co-writing sessions together. We would get together on Zoom. We would tell each other what we were working on, and we would just get to work. And it was really powerful. It was very helpful for me to have those sessions where we were working together and we were both working towards the same thing. We could really be cheerleaders for each other, encouragers for each other. And those times were really very, very powerful. So going back to this class with Rich Litvin, Rich selected a few people from the class who had finished their books, and he selected a few people to send a link to our completed books on Amazon to his email list. And I was in this select group of people for my book to be sent out to his email list. And what this meant was I had a very firm deadline. I had a deadline anyway to be even one of the people considered for this opportunity, which I met. And then I had a really firm deadline. This is happening. Your book has been selected. This is going out. And I thought, oh man, okay, this is real. I actually have a real deadline to get this thing done. And at this point, my book was pretty much done, but I still wanted to go. I wanted to review it. I had some people looking at it. And it was fascinating for me to watch my brain think, I can't do it. It's too much. It's going to take too much time. I can't do it. But I hadn't even tried. I was just certain that I couldn't do it. I thought it's going to be too hard. It's going to take too much time. But I could see it. I could see myself thinking this. And because I could see it, I could question it. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you have heard me talk about so many times about awareness being the first step. We can't change what we're not aware of. So as soon as I became aware that I was thinking, I can't do it, I can't meet this deadline, I was like, wait a second. I really don't have any evidence that I can't. I am very clear in the way I want to write this book. I do not want this book coming out in the world in a way that is sacrificing anything else that is really important to me. So I never, in working on this book, I never stayed up late. I did not cancel engagements or connections or date nights or any of those other things. I made sure that the energy from which I created this book was the type of energy I wanted to evoke. The understanding, the curiosity, the connection. I did not want to do this from stress and from pressure and from deadlines and from overwhelm and from thinking I couldn't do it. So as soon as I could see those things coming up, I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I can. I don't really know if I can. I do know how I want to do it. I do know I've got these parameters. I am not going to do this at the cost of anything else that's important to me, but maybe I can. And surprise, I got it done. And I am so thankful that I had that deadline because it gave me this a deadline. That's what a deadline is. I know the way that my brain works is I very likely would have extended the time that it took me to get this book out into the world. It would have been extended exponentially had I not had this deadline. So with the deadline and my own firm guidelines of how I wanted to create this, what I wanted to bring into the world and how I wanted to do it allowed me to put it all together. So I am so thrilled to tell you that this book is in the world and I want to tell you a little bit about it. So it is called The Binge Eating Breakthrough. The subtitle is Why Food Isn't the Problem and What Really Is. I wanted to write this book with the message, it's not about the food. Ending binge eating has very little to do with food. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know this. You know that is my philosophy and my approach to this. So many people make it all about the food. And is what you eat important? Does what you eat matter? Yes, food matters, but it is not all about the food. There are so many other things that really are going on. It's what's going on under the hood. Food is the symptom. When we see what's happening with food, it's just a symptom of what's actually going on under the hood. So that's what we do in this book is we're really looking at getting under the hood. What's really going on here? If it's not food, what is it? So one of the sentences I say in this book, very early in this book, I say, we'll explore why willpower isn't the answer, why restricting certain foods often backfires, and why understanding your brain and body is the key to lasting change. So if I had to sum up the book into one very concise sentence, that's it. Why willpower isn't the answer, why restricting certain foods often backfires, and why understanding your brain and body is the key to lasting change. Now, I want to go ahead and go over, I thought it would be fun if I just read through the table of contents for you, and then you can just kind of hear, as you listen to this table of contents, you might think, oh, I want to read this book. I want this. Or you might think, meh, not for me. Either way is totally fine. You get to decide. So I've broken up the table of contents into its 4 different sections. So the 4 sections, section number 1 is foundations. It's the foundational information about it. And now the chapters, I have titled the chapters, a lot of them are questions. It's questions that you have likely asked yourself. And I wrote them this way so that you can kind of take a look and be like, oh, is this for me? Is this it? Do I have these questions? If I have these questions, then maybe I do want to read this book. So the chapters in section 1, foundations, a new perspective on binge eating. Is this book for me? Am I broken? What is binge eating and why do I do it? How do I stop binge eating? And it's not about the food. That's section 1. Section 2 is the 4 pillars to cultivating peace with food. So the 4 pillars are pillar number 1, clarity. And the chapters under clarity are, why do I behave this way? Understanding the brain. How did I get here? Making sense of your path. Who do I want to be as an eater? Your identity. That's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is connection. The chapters under connection are, I don't know what my body needs or wants. Body connection. Food calms me. Nervous system connection. Food is how I cope. Emotional connection. I hate the part of me that binges. Internal connection. I can't let anyone see this part of me. External connection. All right, that's pillar number 2, connection. Pillar number 3 is compassion. The chapters under compassion are I'm my own worst enemy, the importance of kindness. Why am I so mean to myself? Changing your internal dialogue. What do I do after a binge? The calm process. And then pillar number 4 is confidence. The chapters under confidence. How do I become confident with my food choices? Developing trust. I did it once, but ... The importance of celebrating progress. I'll never figure this out. Developing resilience. I thought I had it figured out. What to do during relapse. So that's section number 2, the 4 pillars to cultivating peace with food. Clarity, connection, compassion, and confidence. Then we move on to section number 3. Let's talk about food. The chapters here. What should I eat? Determining your food choices. Should I keep certain foods out of the house? All about restriction. How do I stay connected with food? The trust process. What do I do when I want to keep eating? The pause process. That's section number 3. Then we wrap up with section number 4. What's next? Here's the chapters. Is it possible to stop binge eating permanently? How change works. Can I do this on my own? The power of support. And additional resources. I have included a lot of additional resources beyond this book. There are even more resources for you. And then I end the book with an SOS section, which is quick help when you need it most. And I created that section so that you can, if you need help right away in the moment, you can go straight to the SOS section. I have poured so much into this book. I am so excited to bring you the book I wish I had. I've had a handful of beta readers read this book before putting it out and have received some amazing feedback from it. But what is most important to me is that if you are struggling with food in any way, that you check out this book. You see if there's something in this book that might give you some clarity, that might give you some compassion. Overall, the goal of this book is to help shift you from shame and self-blame to curiosity and compassion. Because it's from curiosity and compassion that we can change. We can do something different. If you are in shame and self-blame, you're just going to stay in the cycle. You will stay disconnected. That's how the nervous system works. It's how the brain works. We need to shift into curiosity and compassion. And this book is designed to help you with that shift. If you haven't been able to make that shift on your own, I have designed and created this book for you to do that. Now, you can find this book on Amazon. I will put a link in the show notes. Right now, there is a Kindle version. There is also a paperback version. Next year, I am already in the process of creating a workbook. There is a lot of information in the book itself. There are questions. There are prompts for you to explore. I am in the process of creating a companion workbook that will go along with the book, that you can do the exercises, answer the questions. It will give you space to do all of the work that I guide you through in the book. I'm in the process of creating that workbook for you. It will be available early next year. I will also next year record the audio version. Some people have said they love listening to my voice. If only I could hear your voice all the time. I will create the audio version of this book next year. I would say it will probably happen sometime in the first quarter of 2025. But for now, you can get it on Kindle. You can get the paperback version on Amazon, and I will put a link in the show notes. So if this sounds like something that you would like, that would be helpful, that would be supportive, if any piece of this sounds like, yes, I want that, I encourage you to go get the book. Read it, and don't just read it. Do what's in it. Take action on it. Share it. If you have other friends who struggle with food, Share this book with them. It is called the Binge Eating Breakthrough, but even if binge eating isn't your thing, if you have any sort of pain or challenge with food, this book will help. Read the book, get the book, read it, share it, and review it. What do you do when you go to buy a book? I'll tell you what I do. I read the reviews to decide, is this a book that I want to buy? So if after you read the book, or even when you start reading the book, you're like, wow, this is amazing, this is helpful, please give it a review. And if you don't like it, review that too. I'm not asking you only for your amazing reviews, but reviews are really helpful for anybody else who comes upon this book and is trying to decide, is this for me? Will this be helpful? So I encourage you, get the book, read it, share it, review it. Now, on next week's episode, I'm going to read a chapter from the book so that you can get a taste of what it's like. Now, if you've already heard the table of contents and you're like, I'm not waiting till next week, I want the book now, please go get it. Don't hesitate. There's a link in the show notes. If you're like, well, I'm not so sure, I will share a chapter next week on the podcast so you can kind of get a sense for it. I'm going to read to you the chapter about how did I get here. This chapter also shares my personal story so you can get a little bit more insight of me and what I have been through and how I've been able to make sense of so much of it. So be sure to tune in next week to catch that chapter. And in the meantime, check out my book. I would love to hear if you do get it, if you do read it. I would love to hear your feedback. Yes, I would love for you to post a review on Amazon, but I would also love to hear directly from you. It's so powerful for me when I do hear back from people. So get the book, read it, share it, review it, and I'll see you next week. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, you will love my new book, The Binge Eating Breakthrough: Why Food Isn't the Problem and What Really Is. Discover why willpower isn't the answer, why restricting certain foods often backfires, and why understanding your brain and body is the key to lasting change. Learn to shift from shame and self-blame to curiosity and compassion. Get it today at janepilger.com/book.